Earlier today, the United States vetoed a UN security resolution that would have called for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war, noting that it did not call for the release of the hostages. Now, 14 of 15 council members voted yes to the resolution, but the U.S.'s sole no vote was enough to squash the resolution. In his comments following the vote, the alternate representative of the U.S. in the UN, Ambassador Robert Wood, noted that Hamas has been hoping that the international community would forget about the hostages. Does the 14-1 vote suggest that they may be succeeding? Joining me now to discuss this and other developments in the Middle East is Carolyn Glick. She is a senior contributing editor at the Jewish News Syndicate and host of the Carolyn Glick Show on JNS. Carolyn, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Tony. It's really wonderful. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the States. I know you're over here for a little bit. Let me get your thoughts first on this latest resolution and today's vote.
Well, first of all, I was very gratified to see that the Biden administration did, in fact, veto it. It was touch and go for a while, and that was disturbing. But at least they came through in the end, and they vetoed this deeply, deeply hostile resolution. We have two more that are in the pipeline that are supposed to go forward in the next few weeks. The first one is a bid in the UN General Assembly to oust Israel from the General Assembly that's been put forward by the Palestinians. And they have an automatic majority for that if they go through with the vote, as they have for every anti-Israel resolution that they put forward. And then there's another one that would make it illegal and sanction Israel if we conduct any construction activities, not only in Judea and Samaria, but in Jerusalem and in the Golan Heights. So that would be a very, very serious action by the Security Council if it goes forward. And so we're facing an all-out onslaught against Israel at the UN, which just shows how deeply, deeply demented that organization is, that they are siding with mass murderers against a democracy that's fighting for its survival and fighting these just forces of evil in the Middle East.
Carolyn, I agree. It was good news to see the Biden administration cast this veto vote in the UN today. But when I look at the Biden-Harris administration, it looks like the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde administration. When you look at some of the parting shots that they've taken at Israel, in fact, releasing another $230 million to go into Gaza, while at the same time putting sanctions on Israelis living in the eastern part of Israel in Judea and Samaria.
It's actually extremely shocking. I mean, we have to bear in mind that since October 7th, the United States government under the Biden-Harris administration has poured $2 billion into the Palestinian coffers. And the Palestinian Authority, of course, funds terror, sponsors terror. They pay salaries to terrorists who are in Israeli prisons and annuities to the families of terrorists who are dead. So that's one aspect of it, and it's just as a terrorist authority. And they're also pouring money into Gaza, which is still under the Hamas regime because the administration's policy is to block Israel's efforts to be in charge of the distribution of humanitarian aid. And so they're giving all of this food and water, medicine, et cetera, to Hamas to distribute, and that maintains their iron grip on power. So it's acting to undermine Israel's war goal of destroying Hamas as a military organization and as a political entity. So yeah, you're having this constant back and forth where they say one thing and then they do another, and it's very alarming.
Yeah, thank you. I misstated. That was not going. That $230 million was going to the Palestinian Authority, which oversees the Judea and Samaria. But that's not gotten a lot of attention in the news, the increase in terrorist activity that's been taking place, where you have Jewish communities being attacked, you have suicide vehicles and attacking soldiers, that IDF soldiers that are in the area. So that's not getting much attention. But here we have unprecedented sanctions against Israeli citizens living in those areas. This is, I mean, usually that's designed to go after terrorists, criminals, people involved in violent activity. This appears to be nothing more than political disagreements.
That's exactly right, and it's really alarming. Israel is the first U.S. ally that's ever been sanctioned by the U.S. We're the first democracy that's ever been sanctioned by the U.S., and there are currently more Israelis under U.S. sanctions than there are North Koreans. Those sanctions are supposed to be geared against terrorists, narco-terrorists, narcotics, kingpins, cartels, and here they are. It was an organization or a company, a real estate company called Amana, that lawfully builds homes for Israelis inside of lawful Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria has just been placed under U.S. sanctions. They've sanctioned only people who are not indicted for anything. They've never been investigated for anything. They're not under arrest for anything. Under Israeli law, they've committed no crime. Under American law, they've committed no crime. They're being sanctioned because they are viewed as danger to America's policy of establishing a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria and in Gaza and in Jerusalem. And this is a policy that's rejected by upwards of 85% of Israelis. So the Americans are going after Israelis whose sole crime is opposing the Biden administration's policies in relation to the Palestinians, which is just a stunning act of hostility against the people of Israel.
But it's what we've been experiencing here in the United States with the weaponization of the federal government, that we've seen this, how they've gone after pro-lifers that have been outside praying, of abortion clinics. And so it is the weaponization of government. The problem with this is it's unprecedented. It sets a new standard, and unfortunately will be used again in the future. So this has to be, I think, uncategorically has to be repudiated and denounced as a misuse of authority and power. Now, these sanctions limit, I mean, they're more than just symbolic, because it does restrict their ability to, in some cases, have access to international financial institutions, and in some cases is used to restrict travel.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these people are banned from the international banking system because Israel's banking system is attached to the U.S. Banking system, to the SWIFT system for international banking. So what they say to the Israeli banks is that you have to debank all of these people, so they can't pay their mortgages, they can't pay for gas, they can't pay for their children's after-school activities, they can't pay for groceries, they don't have access to credit cards, they don't have access to their bank accounts. So this is causing people to foreclose on their mortgages, on their car payments, because they can't operate in a modern society where everything is digital and everything is ruled by credit cards and bank accounts. And so this is a debilitating step that they're taking, again, against Israelis who haven't done anything wrong under American law or Israeli law. It's just that they take action that the Americans oppose. And it's not only people who are in Judea and Samaria either. I mean, there was this organization. It wasn't even an organization. This woman called for volunteers to come and block the aid convoys to Gaza because they were all going to resupply the enemies in times of war. And the Americans were forcing Israel to, and continue to force Israel to, allow the constant resupply of Hamas in Gaza under pain of an arms embargo, and that's something that is ongoing still today. So if we don't feed and clothe and water and provide medical medicines for Hamas, because they control all of this, then the Americans impose an embargo on critical weapon supplies, which they're still doing today, to constrain our military actions. And so there was this outcry in the public, and people started just going at 3 o'clock in the morning to block the trucks from getting into Gaza. And so the Americans placed sanctions on this organization. It's called Sav 9, and then on the woman who runs it, and she's married to an American citizen, so he's also under U.S. sanctions. And this is an American citizen with no due process who's committed no crime, and his wife committed no crime, and yet they've been debanked. Their whole life is just in ruins because the administration decided that they don't like the fact that Israelis are trying to block the transfer of material aid to the enemy in times of war.
I mean, it's free speech. I mean, we see what they were doing over here in this country, and they don't touch those that are on the left doing similar demonstrations. Carolyn, I want to get your reaction to, or get the reaction from Israelis to the election as they've had time to process and think through this. How are they looking forward to a Trump administration?
So, first of all, Israelis are exhilarated about the results of the elections. I don't think that there's any question about that. You know, the Israelis overwhelmingly supported Trump in all of the polling that we did in the months preceding the election. Harris had essentially, about 12% support among the public, and Trump got around 70% of the support, and the rest didn't know. So you're talking about enormous support for President Trump and enthusiasm and excitement that he was reelected among Israelis. As you saw, also unprecedented levels of American Jewish support at the polls in critical districts throughout the United States for President Trump. So Israelis are exhilarated. We're worried about the next 60 days under Biden and where we're going to be by January 20th when Trump comes into office. But I think there's a sense overwhelmingly, or it's growing, that this was a miracle that we got 4 years with Trump, and we can't let one day go to waste. And really what we're being given here is not salvation. It's a chance for us to secure our future. That the great aspect of the Trump presidency isn't even the amazing things that he did with recognizing Jerusalem is Israel's capital and moving the embassy, recognizing Israeli sovereignty in the Golan Heights, abrogating the nuclear deal with Iran, and so many other things that he did during his first term. It's also that he just stands by Israel and he says, look, you guys figure out what you need. Explain it to me, and if you convince me, then I'll support you because we're allies. And just standing on our side, this entire 4 years, there's been this gaslighting effect where Biden embraces us with this bear hug and says, oh, I'm for Israel, and I remember Golda Meir in my first term as a senator, and yada, yada, yada. And on the other hand, just implementing these incredibly hostile policies that protect Hamas, protect Iran, protect Hezbollah, protect the Houthis against Israel. And so it's just this sense that, wow, we're going to actually get an American administration coming into office which is going to stand with us for real, not just lip service, but actually stand with us and not undercut us every time. So there's a profound sense of relief. And also, look, we have to just take advantage of this because if we don't, it'll be unforgivable.
Carolyn, many Christians in this country see the election the same way. This didn't save our country, but it sure gave us an opportunity to secure our future. But it requires a lot of activity from now through the end of a 4-year term. We've got to take that responsibility to rebuild it. And from our perspective, the moral foundation of our country. So because it's been disassembled by the left very rapidly during the last 4 years. We just have a couple minutes left. I know you spoke generally, and it's nice to have a friend in the White House, a friendly administration, but are there any specific steps that Israel would like to see from the incoming administration?
I think it'd be very important for the administration to say, look, we don't support a Palestinian state. Gaza was a Palestinian state for 18 years prior to their October 7th invasion. There can't be a Palestinian state. There is no two-state solution. This is a new path to the final solution to the Jewish problem, and we're not going with that. Israel obviously has to secure its future. It has to be in charge militarily of Gaza. It has to apply its sovereignty to Judea and Samaria or whatever Israel wants to do on that count, but we no longer support a Palestinian state. I think that's very, very, very important because otherwise, we can find ourselves pushed back onto this merry-go-round of misery where we're constantly empowering terrorists. Another thing that's very important is to say, okay, what does it mean that Iran can't have nuclear weapons? It means that we support Israel in taking the action to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear-armed state militarily. There is no diplomatic solution to this, only military. And we're going to stand with our ally, Israel, as it takes the kind of action it needs to take Iran off the table as a nuclear state that undermines its hegemony, and it also undermines the stability of its regime at home.
Right.
And the last thing is to say, look, Israel does not have to sit with Hezbollah at its doorstep. That it's obviously that the people on the northern border of Israel with Lebanon aren't going to be able to go home so long as that's the state of affairs. And, Israel, you do what you need in order to secure northern Israel, and we're going to stand with you on that. I think those are very important things to do.
And those three things would be game changers. Carolyn Glick,
Excellent.
always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.